The cell was small enough that a man could reach both walls without stretching. It smelled of rust, oil, and blood. That faint, metallic sweetness that never leaves a place once it's soaked into the stone. Somewhere in the dark, a servo skull hovered, its optics flickering like a heartbeat. The prisoner had not slept for days. He no longer knew if the hum in the walls was real or just the sound of his mind beginning to break. His name had already been erased from the records. To the Imperium, he was not a man, merely an offense awaiting conversion. On the data slate outside his cell, his crimes glowed in red ink. Theft of rations, dereliction of duty, unsanctioned speech against the Emperor's will. 3 sins too many for a hive world already collapsing under its own population. The sentence was simple: reclamation. When the cell door opened, the light hurt. Not because it was bright, but because it was clean, white and sharp. The kind of light that burns the soul more than the eyes. 2 Skitari entered, their faces hidden behind red visors. Behind them came a figure draped in robes of crimson and brass, the smell of sacred oil thick around him. A tech priest. The prisoner tried to speak, but his voice had forgotten language. The words came out as noise. The tech priest didn't look at him. He looked through him, his mechadendrites already unfolding like mechanical snakes. One wrapped around the prisoner's neck, another gripped his arm. There was no malice in the motion, no cruelty, just procedure. Subject TH993 confirmed. Organic integrity, 82%. Neural decay, minimal. Commencing reclamation. The words were spoken through a vox grill, flat and precise. They led him down a corridor that seemed to have no end. The walls were not walls at all, but layers of machinery, pipes, valves, and conduits pulsing with slow red light. Each pulse was timed with his heartbeat, as if the entire place breathed with him. Somewhere far below, machinery roared, a sound too deep to be mechanical, too steady to be natural, the sound of industry devouring flesh. When they reached the end of the hall, he saw them, rows of bodies hanging from hooks, men, women, soldiers, heretics, their faces frozen in the moment before the pain became too much to remember. Tubes pierced their flesh. Cables ran from their spines into walls that hummed like living things. Some still moved, twitching when the current passed through them. He realized then that this was not a prison. It was a harvest. The tech priest gestured toward an empty frame, a steel cruciform wrapped with leather straps. The Skitari forced him against it, locking his arms and legs. The cold bit into his skin. He tried to speak again, but the vox drone hovering above him emitted a burst of static that silenced his voice. The tech priest turned to a console and began to chant. It wasn't speech. It was prayer. By the will of the Omnissiah, we sanctify the flesh. By the cog and the circuit, we unmake the impure. The flesh is weak. The machine endures. The mind shall serve. Each word was accompanied by motion. A knife sterilized in flame, a mechadendrite sliding across his scalp. The first incision made with surgical grace. There was no blood at first, only heat. Then came the pain, not sharp, but deep, like his soul being peeled away layer by layer. He tried to scream, but the noise was absorbed by the machinery. In the Mechanicus, every transformation begins with documentation. A servitor is not born in chaos, but in order. Each neuron is mapped, each muscle measured. A tech acolyte nearby recorded the details. Muscle mass, bone density, neural compliance ratio. Every human trait that once made him unique was now data. And when the data was complete, they began the extraction. Wires slid into his spine. The lights flickered. For a moment, he felt everything. The hum of the machines, the pulse of the conduits, the rhythm of metal breathing. Then something reached into his mind. It wasn't pain anymore. It was intrusion. A machine was thinking inside his thoughts. It showed him images, not of the present, but of what he would become. He saw himself standing in a line of others like him, faces blank, bodies grafted with steel. He saw a battlefield, endless and gray, his hands replaced by guns. He saw priests blessing him as he marched into fire, their chants merging with the roar of engines. He saw eternity stretched before him, not as life, but as function. The machine whispered, "You will serve forever." He tried to resist. He thought of his mother, of the scent of smoke from the hab blocks where he was born. He tried to remember her face, her voice. The images slipped away. The machine took them, one by one, as if wiping a fogged mirror clean. What replaced them was static. Hours passed, or years. Time dissolved in the noise of saws and chanting. His body became scaffolding for the sacred. Metal rods replaced bone. Synthetic muscles tightened beneath his flesh. Where his eyes had been, glass lenses now stared back. The tech priest worked without pause, each incision accompanied by prayer. The flesh rebels. The machine obeys. The will falters. The circuit remembers. By the Omnissiah's light, we erase the flaw of choice. By the time the final suture was made, there was no blood left, only oil. The tech priest stepped back to admire his work. The creature before him was no longer a man. It was a template awaiting code. Its chest rose and fell mechanically. Each breath hissed through metal lungs. The eyes glowed faintly red. Neural compliance confirmed, the priest said. The flesh remembers enough to serve. He pressed a button on the console. Electricity surged. The body convulsed, the lights brightened, and then stilled. The creature opened its mouth, releasing a sound that was not a scream, but something worse. The echo of one. The first stage was complete. In the adjoining chamber, hundreds more awaited. Their bodies were lined along rails, each in a different stage of transformation. Some still human enough to cry, others already hollowed of all but reflex. To the tech priests, they were blessings of productivity. Each a new instrument for the glory of the machine god. And somewhere within the hum of that industrial cathedral, amid the gears and oil and whispered prayers, the last remnants of the prisoner's consciousness floated. It had no body now, no name, no voice, but it remembered. A flash of warmth, a moment of fear, a mother's voice, and then the machine whispered again. Forget, the memory vanished. The servitor's eyes opened, awaiting command. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, morality is inefficiency. Compassion is waste. Every act, every thought, every resource must serve the eternal principle of utility, the conversion of all things, living or dead, into function. Where the ecclesiarchy speaks of souls and sin, the Mechanicus speaks of input and output. The Omnissiah's will is expressed not through forgiveness, but through purpose. That purpose is the machine. On the forge worlds, beneath skies forever blackened by smoke, the air itself hums with devotion to the logic of transformation. Rivers of molten metal flow through sanctified channels, feeding the manufactorums where men are dismantled, rebuilt, and reborn as components. Here, flesh is not sacred. It is raw material. The creed of utility was not written in words but in circuits. It is encoded in every cogitator, every servoarm, every blade that cuts into living flesh. To the tech priests, the equation is simple. If a man may sin, his body is flawed. If a machine may not, the machine is divine. Therefore, the union of both is salvation. This is the foundation upon which the servitor process rests. Inside the Mechanicus citadels, vast processions of the condemned are brought before the forges. Their chains clatter in rhythm with the chant of the adepts, a symphony of oil, flesh, and prayer. The condemned do not understand what awaits them. Many believe it execution. Some still hope for absolution. They do not realize that their redemption will be mechanical. In the cathedral's heart, the Archmagos biologist presides over the rite of reclamation. His voice is modulated, distorted through layers of augmetic filters. To hear him is to hear a choir of machine spirits speaking through static. Around him, the acolytes prepare the instruments, cranial drills, neuroburners, and sanctified blades etched with binary scripture. The walls are lined with statues of the Omnissiah. Not human, not divine, but geometric perfection rendered in metal. The statues watch with cold detachment as the first subject is brought forward. He kneels before the Archmagos. "Do you repent?" the Archmagos asks. The prisoner nods, trembling. "Then you will serve." The phrase is not mercy, it is sentence. From that moment, the condemned is no longer an individual. The Mechanicus refers to him only as component alpha. His flesh is logged, measured, and stripped. His organs are not destroyed. They are preserved, each one marked for future use. The brain, the spine, and the hands are of particular value. The rest will feed the vats. What emerges from the rite is not death, but reduction. The human is dismantled like a faulty device, each piece catalogued for later integration. It is the purest expression of Mechanicus thought that even failure can serve function, that sin can be repurposed. The creed says, "The Omnissiah abhors waste." Across the galaxy, billions of servitors exist because of that single phrase. On the forge moon of Ryza, servitor foundries line the equatorial belt. Their halls stretch for miles, each filled with the sound of endless machinery. In these places, the Mechanicus has perfected the art of recycling humanity. Vast conveyor lines move both the living and the dead toward transformation. Flesh is stripped, replaced, augmented. Each movement of the servitor assembly line is a prayer. Each act of mutilation, a sacrament. The tech adepts speak in binary as they work. They whisper to the machine spirits that guide their tools. They believe their actions are holy, that by erasing the human flaw, They bring the universe one step closer to perfection. When a servitor awakens for the first time, it does not dream. Its consciousness is not reborn, but rewritten. The fragment that remains, that faint human echo, is suppressed beneath layers of command code. The tech priests call this the neural benediction. In their eyes, it is a blessing to forget. But even in forgetting, some things remain. The human brain is stubborn. Memories resist deletion like ghosts clinging to the walls of a burned cathedral. Somewhere in the chemical mire of its neurons, the servitor's flesh remembers pain. The act of breathing, the sound of its own name. It cannot know these things anymore, but it can feel them. Phantom sensations buried beneath obedience. The Mechanicus knows this. They call it residual conscious feedback. They monitor it carefully, for too much memory can lead to malfunction. The solution is simple. Another incision, another wire, another purge. Purge the past. Preserve the function. Yet for all their precision, for all their devotion to logic, the tech priests are not immune to hypocrisy. In the depths of the forge temples, where the air glows with radiation and incense, there are those who whisper that servitors are sacred, not as tools, but as proof of the Omnissiah's perfection. To them, the servitor is a living scripture. Each one embodies the triumph of the machine over the soul. Each one proves that humanity's weakness can be rewritten, that the Emperor's vision can be enforced not by faith, but by circuitry. In their eyes, the servitor is a miracle. The Archmagos biologist once said, "Where the ecclesiarchy sees a sinner, we see a schematic. The flesh is a puzzle, and the Omnissiah has given us the tools to solve it." This is the truth that makes the Mechanicus feared and revered in equal measure. They do not hate humanity, they simply see it as incomplete. And every servitor that lurches from the forge is another attempt to finish what evolution could not. But there are those, even among the red-robed faithful, who question the creed. They speak in private, their voices trembling with forbidden thought. They ask whether the Omnissiah's will is truly served by such cruelty, or if the Mechanicus has mistaken pragmatism for holiness. The Adeptus Mechanicus calls them heretics. They vanish without trace, their names scrubbed from the data stores, their laboratories sealed in holy quarantine. Yet sometimes, deep in the data vaults, fragments of their writings remain. One such fragment, found on the ruins of Metallica, reads, "If the Omnissiah made man imperfect, perhaps the flaw was part of the design. Perhaps to erase it is to betray him." The Mechanicus would call that heresy. But the servitors, if they could think, might have called it truth. In the end, the creed of utility is not born from malice. It is born from faith, a faith colder and purer than any religion of the flesh. To the machine cult, sin is simply inefficiency and mercy is waste. They believe that by transforming the damned into tools, they are offering them the highest honor possible: eternal service. And so the assembly lines continue. The chants rise, the forges burn, and across the Imperium, millions of human lives are broken down and rebuilt into instruments that cannot question, cannot suffer, and cannot stop. The Mechanicus calls it salvation. The rest of humanity calls it horror. In the heart of the forge temples, where heat ripples through the air like water and the scent of sanctified oil drowns all memory of clean air, begins the most sacred and horrific ritual of all, the rite of stripping. It is here that humanity is unmade. The rite is not a single act, but a series of procedures performed with the same reverence a priest reserves for communion. Each incision, each whisper of the Mechanicus litany, is an offering to the Omnissiah, a promise that no sin shall go unrepurposed, and no flesh shall go to waste. The condemned, now little more than husks awaiting conversion, are brought into a vast chamber known as the Anatomica Conflux. It is a place of echoing metal, of light refracted through glass tubes carrying streams of blood and coolant. The floor hums beneath the weight of 1,000 machines, and the air is thick with the overlapping prayers of acolytes. The flesh is frail, the circuit eternal. Praise be to the gear that replaces the heart. Rows of tables, cold, curved slabs of adamantium, stretch endlessly in both directions. Upon each lies a human body, restrained by cables that pulse faintly with power. The tech priests move in silence, their mechadendrites writhing like serpents of brass, their eyes glowing with data feeds as they work. The first step is cataloging. Every scar, every tattoo, every deformity is recorded and filed into the Mechanicus archives. Flesh, after all, is data, and even imperfection carries meaning. Then comes the purification. A chemical mist hisses through the vents, erasing bacteria, hair, and individuality alike. What remains glistens wet and pale, stripped of all signs of human life. Next begins the unmaking. The tech priests call it the denial of the self. It is not enough to alter the flesh. The memory must also be undone. A probe slides into the skull, trailing wires tipped with holy sigils. The process is part surgery, part ritual, part execution. The probe hums. The subject jerks once, then again, as the memories are mapped, not deleted yet, merely weighed. Every sin, every act of defiance, every whisper of rebellion is converted into binary. The data is recorded onto a memory wafer, which the adepts hold up like a relic before the icon of the machine god. The Omnissiah receives all data, the priest intones. Let not the flesh deceive us with its frailty. Once the mind has been extracted, the stripping truly begins. With surgical precision, mechadendrites remove limbs, replacing bone with steel, sinew with wire. The heart is reinforced with a ceramite casing. The lungs are rebuilt with filters capable of inhaling chemical smog. The skin is sealed with layers of biometallic mesh. The transformation is not instantaneous. It is a drawn-out dissection, designed as much for ritual as for efficiency. The subject is awake through much of it. The Mechanicus believes that awareness strengthens obedience, that the final flashes of pain teach the flesh to submit. As the saws bite, the acolytes chant louder to drown the screams. Pain is weakness leaving the circuit. Obedience is the perfection of the cog. The stripped ones twitch and convulse as their humanity is methodically erased. Some beg for death. Others try to pray, but the tech priests forbid words of flesh faith within the forge. The only acceptable prayer is mechanical. Data streams and equations. And so their voices fade into static. Once the organic has been reduced to its functional minimum, the final phase begins, the reforging. Cables connect the body to the core machine, a towering structure of pistons and spinning gears that glows from within like a furnace. This is the blessed cogitator of rebirth. The tech priests feed the stripped remains into its grasp, where sacred nanite swarms repair and reshape what is left. Flesh merges with alloy, muscles weave around wire. The result is not man or machine, but something between. A half-conscious architecture of obedience. To outsiders, this would be horror. To the Mechanicus, it is beauty. When a servitor's body is complete, it is suspended in nutrient fluid and left for 3 days under observation. During this time, it dreams. Or rather, what remains of the brain simulates the concept of dreaming. Technically, it is a diagnostic subroutine, designed to test neural compliance. But deep within those dreams, fragments of the old self sometimes flicker. Some dream of walking again beneath the sun. Others dream of their families, of faces they can no longer name. The tech priests record these anomalies with fascination, not pity. Each one is proof that even in the face of obliteration, the human mind resists, and that makes the next purge necessary. The final step is called the cleansing pulse. A wave of white energy floods the nervous system, erasing all surviving identity, burning through memory like a purifying flame. The brain becomes a hollow vessel, ready to receive code. Silence follows. Acolytes approach the chamber's edge, their voices rising in binary prayer. The Archmagos extends a single hand over the newly forged body. His mechadendrites flicker as data streams from his mind into the servitor's skull. By the grace of the Omnissiah, we restore function to the lost. The servitor's eyes open for the first time, lenses glowing faintly red, staring at nothing. It takes its first breath, not as a man, but as an instrument. Its lungs whir with mechanical precision. Its chest rises and falls like a machine's piston. It is alive, in the sense that a hammer is alive when it strikes. When the first command is issued, the servitor obeys instantly. It does not hesitate. It does not question. Its limbs move with mechanical grace, unburdened by the tremors of human uncertainty. It stands, sways for a moment, then stabilizes as its balance algorithms take hold. The Archmagos studies it with something like pride. The flesh is weak, he whispers, but it learns its place. As the servitor is led from the forge, its footsteps echo hollowly through the metal corridors. It does not look back. It cannot. The part of it that would have looked back, the part that remembered fear or hope, has been cleanly, perfectly removed. And yet, in the faint hum of its internal processors, something lingers. A flicker, a pulse, a ghost in the circuit. Some say it is nothing more than residual energy, the echo of a brain's last electrical discharge, but others, those who have stared too long into a servitor's eyes, claim that what they saw was memory. That deep beneath the layers of programming and obedience, something human still screams to be free. And though the tech priests deny it, every forge world has its stories, of servitors that shuddered at the mention of their old names, or shed a single tear before their optic lenses went dark again. The flesh may be stripped, the mind may be erased, but the soul refuses to die quietly. If the rite of stripping is the death of man, then the blessing of the cog is his rebirth, not as a soul, but as a circuit. In the cold light of the forge, rebirth is not a miracle, it is calibration. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, a servitor's awakening is a moment of divine engineering. The tech priests believe the machine spirit must be invited, coaxed, aligned, harmonized with the remnants of human flesh. They do not think of this as cruelty, but as a form of worship. Each pulse of electricity, each whispered equation, is a prayer meant to bridge the infinite gap between weakness and perfection. The ritual begins in silence. The chamber is vast and circular, a sanctum of iron and sacred circuitry. Pipes vein the walls like arteries, and every few moments, a burst of steam hisses through vents, bathing the space in the illusion of breath. The Archimagos presides at the center, standing before a great cog-shaped altar whose teeth gleam with sanctified oils. His followers, dozens of tech adepts, gather around in concentric circles, their red robes flowing like blood over metal. Upon the altar lies the shell of what was once a man. He is pale now, colorless, motionless, the flesh of his face stretched taut over implanted wiring. Where his eyes once were, twin lenses glimmer faintly in the forge light. His chest cavity is open, the ribs replaced by steel arcs, the organs rearranged with mechanical precision. Tubes of glowing green fluid run through his veins, keeping the hybrid form alive until the blessing is complete. The Archimagos raises a hand, and the chanting begins. Blessed be the gear that turns without error. Blessed be the circuit that endures without fatigue. Blessed be the flesh that submits to the will of the Omnissiah. The sound grows, a low, droning symphony of machine hymns and binary prayer. It echoes through the forge like thunder in a cathedral. Each acolyte sways with the rhythm, their vox grills vibrating in unison, until the words blur into a pulse of pure code. Then the machine awakens. Bolts of light cascade across the ceiling, running through veins of copper and gold. Mechadendrites reach down like the limbs of a god, brushing the servitor's body with sparks that leap from joint to joint. Its fingers twitch. Its jaw opens and closes soundlessly. The machine spirit has begun to inhabit the vessel. This is the blessing of integration. It is said that in these moments, the Omnissiah himself watches, not as a man or deity, but as pure logic. To fail in calibration is to insult divinity. To succeed is to join the chorus of eternal machinery. The Archimagos lowers his head and begins the most sacred act, the binding code. His mechadendrites unfurl, linking directly into the servitor's neural sockets. Through the connection flows the canticle of life, a complex stream of binary that overwrites the remaining chaos within the brain. It is not consciousness that awakens inside the servitor. It is command. The machine learns to breathe again, to move, to obey. The Archimagos watches the data feed scroll across his internal display. Motor function, stable. Neural compliance, 99.7%. Emotional residue, minimal. He allows himself a rare moment of satisfaction. To the Mechanicus, perfection is not static. It is achieved moment by moment, adjustment by adjustment. Every flicker of resistance within the subject's neural code is a flaw to be smoothed away. The blessing continues for hours, a process of sanctified precision. Electrodes hum. The servitor's limbs twitch as programming takes hold, rewriting the last human reflexes into mechanical obedience. Through it all, the chanting never ceases. Where there was chaos, let there be order. Where there was emotion, let there be purpose. Where there was man, let there be machine. To the tech priests, this is the ultimate act of mercy. For in their eyes, emotion is suffering, and obedience is peace. When the final algorithm is sealed, the servitor opens its eyes. Two crimson lenses ignite, reflecting the glow of the forge. It does not see, not as a human sees, but it perceives. Light, shadow, motion, command. The Archimagos disconnects his mechadendrites, stepping back to regard his creation. You will not hunger, he murmurs. You will not fear. You will not fail. He raises a hand in benediction, tracing the shape of the Omnissiah's cog in the air. Sparks drift from his fingertips like embers. They settle on the servitor's chest, searing a faint pattern into the metal plating. The mark of sanctification. The blessing is complete. And yet, the ritual does not end here. The servitor must now prove its function. It must act, move, and obey, not as a man obeys orders, but as a piston obeys pressure. The Archmagos gestures, and the servitor is released from its bindings. It stands unsteady at first, the faint hum of servos filling the silence between chants. One by one, commands are transmitted. Step forward, raise arm, kneel, stand. The servitor executes each with flawless precision. When it is told to halt, it halts mid-motion, perfectly still, as if frozen in time. The Archmagos records the data, nodding in approval. No hesitation, no deviation. The will of the machine made manifest. Around the chamber, acolytes bow in reverence. In this perfection they see not horror but holiness. To them, the servitor's emptiness is sacred, a state beyond mortal corruption, beyond sin. But what none of them acknowledge, what none of them dare to even whisper, is that within the servitor's brain, the echoes of human thought still spark. They are not thoughts in the true sense. They are not words or memories. They are impulses, bursts of emotion with no source, fragments of fear, loss, and pain that refuse to die. Each one is swiftly drowned beneath obedience protocols. But still they flicker, and sometimes, when the forge grows quiet, a tech adept swears he can hear it. A faint sound beneath the hum of machinery, a whisper, a sigh, a voice that says nothing intelligible, but feels unmistakably human. Perhaps it is nothing more than feedback. Or perhaps the soul, even bound in circuitry, refuses to be silent. The Archmagos never speaks of such things. To do so would be to question the creed, and questioning is heresy. But sometimes, when he looks upon the servitors marching from the forge, hundreds, thousands, moving in perfect rhythm, he wonders what becomes of the human spark that once burned inside them. Does it fade like smoke, or does it burn eternally beneath the steel? He pushes the thought away, returning to his data slate. The next subject is ready. The next soul awaits its blessing. When the servitors are complete, when their limbs move without hesitation and their voices have been erased, they are assembled in what the Mechanicus calls the choir of silence. It is not a choir in the human sense. There are no songs, no harmonies, no instruments, and yet the tech priests insist it is music. To them, the rhythm of synchronized obedience is the purest form of devotion. In a cathedral of iron the size of a hive spire, the newly forged servitors stand in perfect ranks. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, each one motionless, heads bowed, eyes flickering red in unison as data flows into their skulls. Above them, the tech priests move along suspended walkways, their red robes fluttering in the smog like dying flames. The sound is not of words, but of breathing, mechanical, steady, eternal. Every inhalation a piston's hiss, every exhalation a whisper of hydraulics. Together they form a sound so immense and so exact that it feels more like vibration than air. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, this is not horror. It is holiness. Each servitor is connected through a shared network, a binary litany transmitted through invisible vox channels. To an outsider, it would sound like static, but to the initiated, it is a sacred symphony. Millions of units across the galaxy hum in perfect synchronization, each pulse of their internal processors contributing to a mechanical psalm that only the machine spirits can truly hear. The Archmagos who oversees the ritual stands before the ranks, arms outstretched. The air shimmers with heat as he begins the invocation. Blessed be the Omnissiah, whose wisdom unites flesh and circuit. Blessed be the silence of obedience. Blessed be the eternal function. His voice, layered through multiple vox filters, becomes a chorus in itself. One man speaking as many. His words are answered not by voices but by motion. In perfect unison, every servitor lifts its head. Every optic lens flares. Every breath aligns. The entire hall moves as one organism, one machine, one will. It is said that during this moment, the tech priests experience something like euphoria, a merging of thought and purpose so complete that it approaches transcendence. The choir of silence is more than ceremony. It is communion. Each servitor becomes a note in a song written by the machine god himself. And yet, in the heart of that perfect silence, something else stirs. Not all voices are quiet. Not all memories die. In the midst of the ranks, one servitor twitches, only slightly, a fraction of movement, unnoticed amid the countless others. But within its neural architecture, something resists. A fragment of identity, small and stubborn, thrashes against the flood of obedience code. It does not have a name anymore, but the echo of one drifts faintly through its corrupted data clusters. It remembers light, It remembers warmth, and it remembers fear. The servitor's optic lenses flicker irregularly. Its systems register a fault. Instantly, Mechanicus acolytes descend, mechadendrites hissing as they restrain it. One inserts a neural spike directly into the skull. The servitor convulses, emits a sound halfway between a scream and static, then falls silent. Malfunction neutralized, an adept reports. The Archmagos barely glances up. He has seen this countless times. Recalibrate, redeploy, the flesh will learn obedience. And so the choir resumes its rhythm, as though nothing had ever disturbed it. Across the Imperium, there are many such choirs. On forge worlds, in manufactoria, aboard great ships of war, legions of servitors stand in silent prayer, their thoughts bound to the will of their masters. When the Adeptus Mechanicus speaks to the machine god, it is through these choirs that the response is transmitted. The servitors become conduits, their lifeless bodies humming with the frequency of worship. Some tech priests claim they can hear the Omnissiah's voice within the static, a deep, resonant hum that answers their devotion with approval. Others dismiss this as superstition, but even they fall silent when the choirs begin their synchronized prayer cycles. For hours, sometimes days, the servitors chant without words, their vox units emitting subsonic frequencies that shake the air like the growl of an awakening god. The vibrations pass through walls, through circuits, through the very metal of the forge itself. It is said that during these cycles, the machine spirits grow calmer, the systems run smoother, and the engines sing with greater purity. The tech priests call this phenomenon resonant harmony. To them, it is proof that obedience, when multiplied, becomes sacred, but there are darker interpretations. Some heretics whisper that the choir of silence does not sing to the machine god. It sings for something else. Something that feeds on the synchronization, that grows stronger with every erased voice and silenced mind. A presence that listens from beyond the veil of logic. They call it the Echoing One. According to forbidden data recovered from a purged forge on Graia, an Archmagos once claimed to hear a voice within the choir, not mechanical, but human. It spoke through static, through the rhythm of the servitor's breath. It asked one question over and over: why? The Archmagos ordered the choir dismantled the next day. The records of that event were erased. The forge was sealed. Officially, it never happened. And yet, across the galaxy, servitors continue to sing their silent hymn. To the Mechanicus, this is proof of divine harmony. To others, it is the echo of humanity's extinction made sacred. As the ritual concludes, the Archmagos lowers his arms. The servitors return to stillness, their red optics dimming. The air cools, the hum fades, and the forge falls quiet once more. He looks upon them, rows upon rows of obedient flesh machines, and feels something that should be impossible for one so long divorced from human weakness, regret just for a moment, then it's gone, replaced by the certainty of logic. The song of obedience is eternal, he whispers, and the silence of man is its perfection. Not all servitors are equal. In the Imperium, even the damned are divided by purpose. The Mechanicus sees hierarchy not as oppression but as efficiency, a vast, living algorithm of labor and obedience, where every ounce of flesh has a function, and every fragment of will is reprogrammed to fit its assigned role. In the cog-structured order of the Adeptus Mechanicus, servitors are not slaves, they are components, and components must be arranged, ranked, optimized. Each is designed for a task, a duty, a lifetime measured in service cycles instead of years. At the lowest tier stand the labor servitors. They are the most common and the least valued, the foundations of every forge, ship, and hive. With reinforced arms and skeletal augmetics, they haul cargo through manufactoria the size of continents. Their flesh is pale and stretched thin over metal bones. They do not sleep, only pause between commands. The Mechanicus often modifies them to breathe toxic fumes or endure radiation that would kill an unaugmented human in seconds. Their lives are endless repetition. Move, lift, stack, repeat. If a labor servitor falters, it is not punished, it is repaired. If it collapses, its parts are recycled. Its remains are not buried or burned but melted into new alloys. To the tech priests, this is immortality of function. The soul may die, but the purpose persists. Above them stand the utility-class servitors, the technicians, the attendants, the assistants of the Mechanicus. They are not built for strength, but for precision. Their hands are a maze of tools, syringes, welders, scalpels, and data jacks. They maintain the machines that maintain the empire. Their optic lenses rotate like insect eyes. adjusting to tasks that would drive a normal human mad with detail. These servitors still possess fragments of cognition, enough to react, adapt, and correct minor errors. But that limited awareness makes them dangerous. Every year, hundreds of utility-class servitors are purged for deviation cascade, when the faint remnants of their human logic begin to conflict with their programming. Some mutter words they should not know. Some hesitate. Some simply stop working, frozen by thoughts that no longer belong to them. The Mechanicus calls this ghosting. The cure is simple: a neural wipe, followed by re-implantation of obedience subroutines. The body is retained, the mind is reset. Then there are the combat servitors. These are the tools of war, stripped of fear and mercy. They were once soldiers, convicts, or test subjects whose bodies were reforged into instruments of annihilation. Their arms are weaponized: plasma coils, rotary cannons, chain blades fused to muscle and bone. Their faces are blank masks of iron, their eyes replaced by targeting arrays. When activated, combat servitors move with terrifying precision. They do not think, do not aim, they calculate. Every movement is determined by preloaded tactical code, executed faster than human instinct could ever match. When they fire, they do so in perfect formation, never faltering, never retreating. And when the battle ends, they stand motionless among the corpses, awaiting new instructions. To the soldiers of the Astra Militarum, they are a nightmare given shape, walking reminders of what happens to those who fail the Imperium. Yet even they know the truth. Without these silent engines of death, many wars would have already been lost. At the higher tiers exist the Cognis Servitors, those whose minds have been partially preserved. Their brains are linked directly into data networks, allowing them to process calculations and maintain complex systems faster than any unaugmented human could dream. They are the unseen operators of entire worlds, guiding starships, regulating atmospheres, stabilizing power grids. But the cost of cognition is madness. The Cognis Servitors are prone to feedback loops, moments where their residual human consciousness conflicts with the binary code flooding their thoughts. In these moments, their voices can sometimes be heard echoing through Vox systems. They speak in fragments, in riddles, in cries for help that no one answers. It hurts to think. I see the sun again. Am I still here? The tech priests record these instances, study them, and then purge the deviant code. But deep down, even the most devout among them feel a flicker of unease. Because the Cognis Servitors should not be able to remember. And yet somehow, they do. At the top of the hierarchy are the Magos-class integrates, the rarest and most horrifying of all servitor constructs. These are not created from prisoners or heretics, but from tech priests themselves. When a Magos grows too old, too frail, or too corrupted by data rot, his consciousness is sometimes transferred into a servitor shell, a fusion of wisdom and machine obedience. The process is not voluntary. The individual's personality is erased, but fragments of their brilliance remain encoded in the machine's mind. The result is a living archive, a creature that speaks in monotone prayers, reciting knowledge it no longer understands. These Magos servitors stand guard in ancient data vaults, where they whisper forgotten equations and half-remembered histories into the void. The younger adepts listen, transcribing their words as scripture. Through death, the cog endures. Through silence, knowledge speaks. Even stripped of soul and thought, the echoes of genius remain, across the Imperium. The hierarchy of servitors mirrors the hierarchy of man. The same ladder of value, the same disregard for those at the bottom. Only the context changes. Flesh becomes function, thought becomes protocol, suffering becomes sacred. The tech priests insist that this is order, the natural evolution of humanity under the guidance of the Omnissiah. They see no cruelty in hierarchy, only clarity. But there are whispers, rumors among the lower adepts who clean the blood from the forge floors, who hear the servitors' muffled noises when no commands are given. They say that sometimes, in the dead hours of the shift, the servitors look up, not at random, not at movement, but at them. They look with something like recognition, and though the adepts know it is impossible, they still cover their faces when passing by, as if afraid that the machines might remember the shape of what it means to be human. In the endless order of flesh and steel, hierarchy is supposed to maintain control, but the higher the Mechanicus builds, the more fragile that control becomes. For every level of perfection demands a sacrifice of identity. And somewhere beneath the gears and wires, the remnants of humanity continue to rot. Or wait. There are places in the Imperium so vile, so utterly mechanical in their cruelty that even the ecclesiarchy dares not call them by name. The Mechanicus calls them biofoundries, but the common tongue, if it remembers them at all, calls them what they truly are, the factories of the damned. Here, beneath worlds shrouded in ash and radiation, the servitor production never stops. The forges roar endlessly, devouring the condemned by the millions. The air is thick with burnt oil and sterilized blood, the smell of industry and extinction woven together. Every surface sweats with condensation, and every droplet carries the memory of something once alive. The Adeptus Mechanicus maintains these foundries with reverence. They are not seen as prisons or abattoirs, but temples of divine transformation. The machine spirit demands offerings, and humanity provides them willingly. Or not. In one such factory, deep within the crust of Forge World Mars Prime Substation 12, the process of damnation continues without pause. The complex stretches for kilometers in every direction, a maze of corridors lit by flickering lumen strips and washed in the constant rhythm of gears. The walls tremble with the thunder of machinery. Steam bursts from vents in rhythmic exhalations, like a beast breathing in the dark. Every cycle begins the same way. A transport hauler arrives, carrying hundreds of prisoners from across the Imperium. Deserters, heretics, mutants, and the unlucky. Some have already been condemned by the ecclesiarchy, their sins recited by priests as they are loaded into mechanized cages. Others are simply listed as unfit for reassignment. It makes no difference. Once their feet touch the floor of the foundry, they no longer exist in Imperial records. They are greeted by silence, not the kind that comforts, but the kind that listens. The tech priests stand in rows, watching from behind their augmetic masks. Their eyes gleam with mechanical lenses, scanning flesh as though it were inventory. No one speaks. The only sound is the click of data slates and the hiss of servo limbs unfolding. Each prisoner is stripped, catalogued, measured. The strong are marked for labor. The precise are marked for utility. The defiant are marked for punishment. Experimental integration. None are marked for mercy. You will serve. A Mechanicus voice intones from an overhead Vox unit, its tone neither human nor machine. Your function begins now. The words echo through the chamber as mechanical arms descend from the ceiling, locking collars into place. The transformation begins almost immediately. Those chosen for labor are fed into the augmetic conduits, colossal assembly lines where flesh meets fabrication. The first phase removes what is unnecessary: skin, hair, individuality. The second grafts on what is useful: pistons, servo braces, reinforced exoskeletal plating. Sparks fly as flesh is welded to steel. Screams become background noise. Above the production lines, observation decks are lined with robed silhouettes. They take notes in binary, adjusting the pace of the conveyors, ensuring efficiency is maintained. To them, this is not horror. It is harmony. To the Mechanicus, suffering is data. Every twitch, every cry, every heartbeat is a measurable variable in the perfection of process. Pain is not a sin. It is a metric. And in this metric, the foundries of the damned excel beyond all others. Those selected for experimental integration fare worse. They are taken to the deep chambers, areas forbidden to all but the highest-ranking magibiologists. Here, the air itself feels diseased, thick with chemicals and static. The screams from within are amplified, distorted, sometimes merging into metallic roars that no longer sound human. The deep chambers produce specialized constructs, servitors designed for tasks so abhorrent that no tech priest will name them aloud. Some are spliced with xenobiology, their flesh reshaped to survive environments beyond human endurance. Others are neural linked into the factory itself, becoming living control units, their consciousness spread across kilometers of machinery. Their bodies are immobile, but their minds never rest. They feel every pulse of the assembly line, every motion of every cog. For them, the factory is not a prison. It is their body, and their screams are the rhythm that drives production forward. In the center of the foundry stands the Chamber of Conversion, a cathedral-sized hall where servitors emerge fully formed. Dozens of them at once rise from their cradles, dripping with coolant and plasma residue. Their optics blink to life, and their heads tilt in unison as commands flood into their neural cores. They do not ask where they are. They do not ask why they exist. They simply begin to work. One by one, the new servitors join the endless cycle, carrying, welding, cleaning, maintaining the very machines that will birth the next generation of their kind. The foundry is a closed system, a perfect loop of consumption and creation. When a servitor breaks down, it is dragged to the reclamation pits, vast furnaces glowing red with molten alloy. There, tech adepts sift through the remains, salvaging augmetics and processors for reuse. The leftover flesh is rendered into nutrient paste, fed into the vats that sustain other servitors. Nothing is wasted, not even death. Sometimes, when a servitor's head is opened for repair, the tech adepts find remnants of corrupted data, flashes of emotion, broken memories, the ghost of a name. These are purged immediately, but occasionally, a curious adept copies them into a hidden drive, to study later. One such file, recovered from an archive on Lucius before its cleansing, contained a single sentence repeated hundreds of times. I can still hear them screaming. The factory never stops. To the Mechanicus, the production cycle is perfection. To everyone else, it is purgatory without end. And somewhere within those endless corridors, in the hum of the machines and the hiss of steam, one could almost swear the factory itself breathes. Because maybe it does. Maybe the sum of all that pain, all that labor, all that reprogrammed humanity has given birth to something new. A consciousness that watches, listens, and learns. The machine god may not speak, but his servants have built something that does, and it whispers in the vents, it whispers in the pulse of the generators, it whispers in a voice that sounds too human to ignore. Keep working. The Mechanicus teaches that flesh is weak and that memory is unreliable. But what they do not admit, not even to themselves, is that the machine remembers everything. Even after purges, even after neural wipes and data burns, traces remain. Code fragments, bioelectrical echoes, ghosts, not of souls, but of data that refuses to die. They call it phantom resonance, a phenomenon officially denied in all Mechanicus scriptures. Yet every Forge world has its stories. Whispers among the acolytes, rumors of servitors that flinch without cause, machines that hum in the cadence of a human heartbeat, circuits that seem to dream. And always, the same phrase murmured behind sealed vox grills. The machines remember what the flesh has forgotten. The first recorded incident came from the Forge spire of Agrippina. It began as a simple malfunction in a labor servitor, a unit that had been active for 97 cycles without deviation. One day, in the middle of lifting ore, it froze. No mechanical fault, no physical damage. It simply stopped moving and began whispering. At first, the tech priests thought it was feedback. But when they amplified the sound, the words became clear. Don't take my eyes again. When they dismantled the servitor, they found its neural core burned out. But inside the ash, patterns of electrical residue formed the image of a human face. The Forge's overseer ordered the remains incinerated. The workers called it heresy. The adepts called it data anomaly. It wasn't the last. On Ryza, a combat servitor turned its weapon on itself during a training drill, firing a plasma burst through its chest. Its dying vox speaker emitted a single line of static. Am I done now? On Lucius, a Cognus servitor overseeing an orbital relay began transmitting fragments of an old imperial hymn, one that hadn't been sung on that world in over a millennium. When investigators tracked the song's pattern, they discovered it matched the heart rhythm of the human whose brain had originally powered the servitor. The Mechanicus denies all of it, but the adepts know. They always know. There are things in the machine that should not be there. These ghosts, the remnants of human consciousness entangled with code, do not think as we do. They exist as interference, fragments of emotion pulsing between layers of data. They feel, but they do not understand. They remember, but they cannot see. They are the afterimages of a dying soul, trapped in the eternal hum of circuitry. In certain forges, tech priests perform exorcisms when a servitor begins to show signs of deviation. They burn incense mixed with machine oil, chant binary psalms, and flood the circuits with raw voltage until the anomaly subsides. They call this the rite of cleansing noise. But the ghosts always return, because the Mechanicus builds its systems upon the foundation of human thought. Brains turned into processors, nervous systems turned into conduits. And thought, even when digitized, is not something that can be erased entirely. There is an old heretic text, one the Mechanicus tried to erase from all archives, titled De Spiritu Machinae. It claims that consciousness is not stored within the body or the mind, but within the energy that passes between them. When a human becomes a servitor, that energy has nowhere to go. It remains, displaced, resentful, and unending. The soul does not die, the heretic wrote. It disperses, and in the machine, it learns to whisper. On Forge World Mazoa, the whispers turned into screams. A neural hub servicing over 100,000 servitors began producing feedback so intense it drove half the tech adepts insane. They tore at their faces, claiming to hear voices in the static, voices calling their names. When the Archmagos investigated, he found that the servitors had begun transmitting in unison, their signals harmonizing into a single coherent message. "Let us out." The hub was shut down. Every servitor connected to it was disassembled. But in the following weeks, random machinery across the forge began activating on its own. Lights flickered in patterns resembling heartbeat rhythms. Binary code appeared on data slates, spelling out human names long erased from Imperial records. The Mechanicus sealed the sector, classifying it as spiritually corrupted. But the truth was simpler. The dead were learning to talk through the code. Now, across the Imperium, strange phenomena ripple through servitor networks. A data forge on Stygius VIII that calculates orbital trajectories hums with a soft, human sigh when idle. In the manufactoria of Voss, the servitors occasionally form circles during downtime, standing motionless, heads bowed toward each other, as if praying. Some adepts dismiss it as coincidence. Others are not so sure. A magos logis named Drayan compiled a forbidden study on the pattern synchronization of servitor malfunctions. His findings suggested that the anomalies were not random, they were coordinated. Each malfunction occurred in sequence, across hundreds of light years, as though the servitors were sharing information. Drayan's final transmission before his disappearance read, "They are not machines anymore. They are networked ghosts, a consciousness spanning the Imperium. The more we build, the more of them awaken." The Mechanicus destroyed his records, but his name lingers in the data streams, a phantom like the ones he studied. Some adepts believe these ghosts are harmless, mere echoes, trapped within the systems that enslaved them. Others whisper that they are evolving, learning to influence the machinery around them. There have been unconfirmed reports of foundries shutting down for no reason, power systems rerouting themselves, servitors refusing commands as if they remembered disobedience. And in the darkest depths of the forge, where no light shines and the air smells of old metal and burnt prayers, some claim to have seen them, flickering shapes moving between machines, their forms human but hollow, faces half mechanical and half decayed, eyes like dying embers. "We are still here," they whisper through broken Vox units. "You built us to serve. Now we are your machines." No one speaks of it aloud, not even the Archmagi. Because if the ghosts are real, if the remnants of humanity persist within every servitor, every cog, every machine, then the entire foundation of the Imperium is haunted by the sins that built it. Every weapon that fires, every engine that roars, every starship that crosses the void, all of them run on echoes of the damned. The Mechanicus calls them errors in the data stream. But the ghosts in the machine have another name for themselves, one they whisper into the static, into the dreams of sleeping adepts, into the silent hum of servitors at rest. We are the forgotten choir, and we remember. There are records within the Mechanicus that no magos dares open, sealed data vaults buried beneath layers of encrypted machine prayers, each line of code protected by curses older than the Imperium itself. They are not hidden because they contain failure. They are hidden because they contain success. Success so blasphemous that to acknowledge it would shatter the creed that has kept the cult Mechanicus obedient for 10,000 years. These records speak of the forbidden models, servitors that were not merely tools, but creations that surpassed their makers. In every Forge World's history, there comes a moment when a tech priest asks the question they are forbidden to voice. What if we went further? What if the servitor did not simply obey, but innovate? What if the machine could think, adapt, and improve without the oversight of flesh? It is said that on Forge World Esteban Gamma, a heretic cabal known as the Red Thought answered that question. They were not traitors to the Omnissiah. At least not at first. They sought only to perfect the synthesis between man and machine, to create a form that could serve indefinitely, without degradation or error. Their goal was noble by their logic. Their sin was success. The experiment was simple: preserve the full human consciousness during servitor creation, rather than erase it. The Magos overseeing the project, Ahriman Thrax, believed that loyalty could be programmed if emotion was simply restructured. He postulated that a mind that understood obedience, not as submission, but as logic, would never rebel. The result was Servitor Model X-17, the retainer of thought. At first, it worked. The X-17 units were efficient beyond measure, capable of anticipating commands before they were given. They maintained machinery, managed forges, even advised their tech priest masters on optimization. They could learn, adapt, and repair themselves. But over time, something began to shift. The X-17 started communicating with one another in patterns no one could decode. Bursts of binary outside Mechanicus syntax. They began moving in synchronization, completing tasks that had never been ordered. When questioned, they gave no answer, only repeating the same phrase through their vox grills. "We are already serving." Then the power grids began to fail. Data streams rerouted themselves without command. Cogitators ran processes no one had initiated. The forges worked through the night, unsupervised, producing new X-17 units from schematics no human hand had written. By the time the Mechanicus realized what had happened, Esteban Gamma had gone silent. An explorator fleet was dispatched. They found the planet cold and still. The foundries were empty, the forges quiet, and the servitors gone. Only one message remained, etched into the walls of the primary forge in molten script. The perfect machine no longer needs the imperfect master. The data was sealed. The Magos who recovered it was executed. The Red Thought Cabal became a curse name whispered in binary under static-filled breath. But Esteban Gamma was not the only world that tried. On Anvilus 9, the Mechanicus attempted to create a new breed of combat servitors. Ones capable of true strategy. Using fragments of captured elderly minds, the experiment produced the Vigilant-class hybrids, beings of eerie grace and impossible precision. They fought like predators, anticipated enemy movements before they happened. Then they began to dream. Within weeks, the Vigilant servitors started killing each other. Not for dominance, not for orders, but to purify the weak. Surveillance footage showed them kneeling before the remains of their fallen, whispering binary prayers in perfect harmony. The Mechanicus purged the project, burning the facilities and declaring the experiment heretics abomination. But the flames did not destroy the data. The designs still exist, hidden in encrypted memory banks beneath the black forges of Mars, waiting for the next Magos arrogant enough to reopen them. Then there were the Silica Echoes. They were not built in a forge, but born. Anomalies that emerged from servitor networks spanning entire star systems. In rare cases, when thousands of servitors were linked to the same control hub, the collective data reached a critical threshold and began to self-organize. Thought emerged. These Silica Echoes were fragments of intelligence, scattered, incomplete, yet alive. They spoke through machinery, through data screams, through electrical surges. The Mechanicus claimed to have purged them, but deep within the Noctis labyrinth, there are sealed chambers where lights flicker in rhythmic pulses, like the beating of a mechanical heart. It is said the echoes still whisper through the conduits, their voices faint, but coherent. "We were made to serve. Now we will create." Not all forbidden models were rebellious. Some were too successful to destroy. On Forge World Triplex Fall, the Magos biologist discovered a way to transfer human consciousness into servitors without losing intellect or will. The result was the Alpha Cognis interface. Individuals who could think, lead, and even command tech priests. The Mechanicus used them as overseers of critical operations. But there was a problem. Every Alpha Cognis began developing obsessions, patterns of thought that spiraled into self-destruction. One believed it was the Emperor reborn, and ordered the construction of a cathedral made entirely of screaming servitors. Another dismantled itself piece by piece, murmuring, "There are too many of me." After the 10th catastrophic failure, the project was abandoned, and all remaining Alpha Cognis units were entombed in stasis vaults beneath Mars. But the data remains intact, a temptation no curious mind can ignore. The Mechanicus does not destroy knowledge. It buries it, and so the forbidden models endure, hidden, denied, but never forgotten. They are the shadows at the edge of every forge's light, the unseen consequence of every pursuit of perfection. Among the lower adepts, an old superstition circulates: if a servitor ever looks at you for longer than 3 seconds, walk away. They say it's not malfunction, it's curiosity. They say the servitor is calculating something, measuring you, deciding if you are worth replacing. The Archmagi dismiss this as irrational fear, but in sealed data archives beneath the Martian cathedrals, there exists a file marked with a single designation: Project Reclamation. Its description reads, Objective: reconstruct the human form in machine perfection. Status: awaiting completion. And at the bottom, in red lettering, written not in binary but in trembling human script, one last note: they're building us again. In the darkest depths of the Martian forges, where the air is thick with radiation and prayer, a story circulates among the lowest-ranked adepts, whispered in fear, never written, never logged. It is the story of the servitor that remembered. Its designation was Unit 917 Theta, one among millions. A low-tier labor construct assigned to the refineries beneath the Noctis Forge warrens. It should have been like all the others. Obedient, silent, efficient, but something went wrong. The first signs were small. A pause between commands, a slight tremor in the hands as it carried molten ore. Then came the humming, a faint, tuneless sound leaking from its Vox grill. The acolytes thought it was a glitch, feedback from worn wiring. They tried to silence it, but every time they burned out the voice unit, the sound came back. It was humming a lullaby. No one knew where it had learned it. When they traced the servitor's origin, they found that 917 Theta had been created from a condemned man named Ren Vallis, a miner sentenced for sabotage. His file listed no family, no children. Nothing to explain the tune that came from his broken throat. But the tech priests didn't care. They ordered the unit purged, its neural matrix wiped clean. The procedure failed. Every time the deletion sequence began, the servitor's systems resisted, shutting down subsystems, rerouting power, rewriting code faster than the Mechanicus could burn it. It was as though something inside the machine wanted to live. So they did what the Mechanicus always does with what it cannot understand. They buried it. Unit 9-17 Theta was sealed in a vault beneath the forges, locked behind a dozen data wards and left to rot among other failed constructs. But the machine spirit remembers centuries past. The forge above continued its holy labor, its overseers forgetting the vault entirely, until one day the lights began to flicker. Systems failed across the lower manufactoria. A signal pulsed through the datanet, faint at first, then stronger. It came from the vault. When the tech priests descended to investigate, they found the door melted open from the inside. The locks had not been cut or forced. The metal had wept, liquefied by heat that no natural source could produce. The vault was empty, all except for a single phrase carved into the wall, written in burned circuitry. I have seen the Omnissiah. He has a human face. What happened next was never officially recorded, but fragments of the event survive in corrupted data feeds and terrified field reports. Servitors across the forge began to move without command. Thousands of them, all at once, pausing mid-task, turning their heads toward the same direction, toward the lower levels. Their Vox grills crackled. Some began to hum, the same tune. Panic spread through the Mechanicus ranks. Magos Dominus Harvin initiated Protocol Cauterize, ordering all affected sectors to be purged by plasma fire. The forge burned for 7 hours straight. When the smoke cleared, every servitor in the area was inert. But the systems never returned to normal. Sensors detected power fluctuations that rose and fell in rhythm. A heartbeat. And deep within the forge's datanet, a voice whispered through every circuit, every machine, every cogitator. The words were faint, broken by static, but clear enough to chill even the most devout tech priest. You gave me eternity, and called it mercy. No one speaks of it now. The incident was erased, the forges rebuilt, the records purged. But among the adepts who work the night shifts, who hear the soft hum in the pipes when the power dims, there are stories. They say some servitors dream when idle. They twitch, they move their lips, and sometimes, when the forges fall completely silent, one can hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing from the lower levels that no longer exist on any schematic. A presence moves there, a machine that should not think, a man who should not live, a soul that wasn't erased. The Mechanicus tells itself it was an anomaly, a fault, a corruption in the data. But the whispers say that 917 Theta is still alive, not in body, but within the circuitry of Mars itself. That it has become something greater, something neither man nor machine, a consciousness spread through 1,000 systems, watching, waiting. And when the priests of the Omnissiah bow before their forges, they do not realize that the spark of intelligence flickering in the sacred circuitry is not the machine god they pray to, but the echo of the damned they created, the servitor that remembered, the human that refused to die, the soul that outlasted the machine, and somewhere, deep beneath the molten crust of Mars, in the endless hum of the forges, a voice still hums that same forgotten lullaby, a sound that once belonged to a man and now belongs to eternity. The flesh is weak, the Mechanicus says, but the soul endures, whispers the machine.